guys? Welcome back to Held Captive Media, where we talk about movie shit. Mainly because we review movies on this channel. I'm so deep into like the stories that I like to share them with my friends. And Zane has a quote for us about a kind of particularly interesting story. Zane, if you could.
So we've got a quote from the Ronin here. The Russo brothers were asked about returning to Disney and also potentially tackling their highly anticipated X-Men reboot. Joe Russo, of course, reminds us he is a copy of the Hulk comic where Wolverine made his first appearance and suggested once Kevin Feige was ready to pursue an X-Men film, they'd be game to be involved in shaping a new take on the mutant team.
Okay, so why did you throw your phone?
Because I don't have a case on it. Let's
go.
Whatever.
Anyway, that was ridiculous. Guys, let's get back to the actual story we were talking about. So,
I just love producer Lacey's face.
Yeah.
So, guys, when Fox was purchased by Disney, there were plenty of questions. What's going to happen to, studios? What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen to that? Fox Searchlight, blah, blah, blah. But the main question in everybody's mind, even with the John Krasinski rumors at the time for Fantastic Four and everything, yes, people were excited to talk about like, ooh, what's Kevin Feige going to do with Fantastic Four? The real question in everybody's mind, the real thing that everybody was thinking about was, what are they going to do with X-Men? What is going to happen with one of the most successful comic book franchises of all time being introduced into the MCU? And I think there's a couple of reasons why this story is pretty interesting. These people have worked with Kevin Feige before, and they know how much he likes to keep things under wraps and generally doesn't want a spotlight drawn on things that aren't going to happen because it builds incorrect anticipation and it possibly leads to upset audiences. So for them to drop this information, for one, makes me feel kind of sketched out. Like maybe they're already talking about doing it, or maybe they're just trying to get a job. Directors want jobs equals, of course. That always happens. But the question continues: who's going to direct these movies? Who is going to be cast to play some of the most iconic roles like Wolverine or Storm? I mean, what is going to be the MCU's take on the X-Men franchise? And really, what do you guys want it to be? So the question is to you guys, what do you think is going to happen? And what do you want to happen? Zane, let's start with you.
So this has been kind of one of the things that the MCU has been dancing around for so long is how are they going to, because for the longest time, they weren't allowed to say the M word. They weren't allowed to say mutant.
Yeah.
It was like taboo. So they were like coming up with any kind of way
changing origin stories, changing this,
doing different things where technically they had some of these mutant characters like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver because they were shared.
Now with the introduction of spoilers, Professor X in Doctor Strange, and also Mr. Fantastic in Doctor Strange, you're starting to see these Fox characters kind of, and the Deadpool announcement, of course, and Deadpool 3 officially being on the books.
Yeah.
We're starting to see more of it blend through. So,
and it's kind of seeing how are they going to, because they've tiptoed around it for so long. They've built all these worlds, a lot of the TV shows where they've kind of like brought them in, but not actually fully incorporated them. It's been one of those things where it's like, how are we going to get around doing this? And so to see them finally say basically like, hey, it's official. We're now bringing in what makes up almost half of all the things that happen in the Marvel comics, because the mutants are just throughout the whole comics. Like it is something that is integral to the world that Marvel has built. And now to finally see like we've got 20 years of these movies, or what is it, 15, 20 years?
Of the MCU movies or the X-Men films?
The MCU movies. It's 15, right?
Okay, so if Iron Man came out in 2008, that would be 10, and then you add like
I think just under 15 years.
Under 15 years,
yeah,
about
just under 15 years. So yeah, it's been like this
That's
whole
crazy.
And to have like a whole universe that like one of the big plot points of that
to come
universe,
out with its 30th film.
Yeah, one of the big plot points of that universe is like these people who just like happen to have special powers, like to just pull that away from it or to retcon certain things and do that to finally be ready to just like, okay, we're going to tackle this thing. I feel like the entirety of nerd culture is just holding their breath. Like, how is How's this going to play out? What's going to happen? So if the Russo brothers do get it, all eyes are about to be on them because
everybody's waiting to see how do you like, can you really say that mutants are a new thing? Do you make it something that they've hidden from in the past? Do you make it something that like an active enemy depleted them with? Is it a matter of them coming in from the multiverse? But the question remains, you can't just say, well, mutants have been here the whole time with no explanation. Yeah. There has to be something. And then the question is, what's going to be viable enough for us to buy? And how are we going to accept, on top of that, new iterations of these characters that have been played for like 20 years or 15 years? Like, I mean, Hugh Jackman has been the Wolverine since 2000. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we're going on 22 years of one person playing the same character, so never ever played by anybody else.
I don't know. Like it's so crazy because it feels like it's so obvious that like a lot of these characters that we already have in the Marvel universe are mutants. It's gonna be weird to like see where they fit it in. If they like, I like Logan. You were talking about how like maybe it's a comic or something that has something to do with like Scarlet Witch changing.
House of M.
House of M. But the thing
that
is,
sounds like a cool explanation, especially with the movie that just came out.
That's what it should have been. But now with Scarlet Witch's character, spoilers for Doctor Strange, guys. If you haven't seen Doctor Strange, what are you doing? It's on Disney Plus. Yeah. So, with spoilers for that, no, I'm about to spoil it even more. Yeah. At the end of the movie.
Yeah,
she's apparently gone.
Dies.
So
but I don't
now
think
could it
she's
be
gone.
a multiversal Wanda? Maybe.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But
like,
then
she's not gone.
I think it could be something as crazy as Patrick Stewart went a little rogue, or whoever Professor X will end up being. I mean, he was just that in the other universe. I don't know if they're going to use him again for this. I doubt they would. But whoever Professor X is going to be, he's more jaded, and he's somehow used like Cerebro to wipe the memory of mutants from everybody's minds. That's another theory that I think could like be really cool, because then at some point, let's say there's another like universal threat, right? And then all of a sudden, like the few mutants that are left around, maybe after some sort of large extermination that happened, the ones that are left around, the ones that Patrick Stewart or Professor X had possibly saved, they have to come into the fold now. I could buy that. But it's just like, who all is going to buy this? Like, how can you make this work? It's really the biggest question. And would you be excited about the Russo brothers doing it? I mean, I loved Infinity War and Endgame, but do you guys maybe want a different spin on it? Is it just like been there, done that? How do you guys feel about it?
You go.
So I think this is probably the one like nerd property that I've been so scared of for the longest time.
Definitely.
Is just because it's like, what's the way to move forward with it? Because if I know that one of the ways that I've seen, like there was a guy on TikTok, he was talking about like, oh, well, like, wouldn't it be cool because they're supposed to be second class citizens if it was like, oh, they were here, but they were being so suppressed.
That theory.
But it is one of those things that it doesn't really play off.
Why
well,
would somebody like Peter Parker ignore the existence of mutants, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I understand
some of those people
maybe
that are just like really like truly like, yeah, you've got your larger than life superheroes, but some of your street level people, like they've gotta like recognize, and like that's something that like when Peter's powers first came up, like people would have been like, is he a mutant?
Or
like,
who's to say that there's the other theory that I was kicking around, and maybe other people have thought this on the internet, you can tell me otherwise. So Spider-Man No Way Home makes this big notion of the fact that Doctor Strange is very loose and easy with magic, right? Who's to say that we just don't know that at some point in time a Doctor Strange-esque character, maybe Tilda Swinton's character, was approached by a Professor X type and being like, listen, wipe our memory from everywhere. We're being hunted like animals. Like, there's so many different ways they could explain them still being there.
And there are times in the comics where Professor X, like, hides the mutants. That's, like, a whole thing.
I mean, Logan is a perfect example. They were literally hiding from people in that movie, you know?
Well, and he also, like, he goes out into the world. He finds mutant children. He brings them to the school to train their powers so that they can integrate themselves into normal society. That's been kind of the mission, is to help, but it's how does that look like from the shadows? It's always been he's trying to help while trying to also fight for equality, and it's a great story arc that's done so well through the comics that it's kind of like, okay, now how do we see that story play out when they're in hiding, when people don't know about them? So it's like, do they still get that hate? Do they end up getting loved because of like the superhero love? Obviously, one of the big things that, like, in Marvel Comics, the Civil War arc where, like, you have to register if you have powers or anything.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the things that so desperately hurt the X-Men in the Marvel Comics was that, and that's something that's already in there. So that would be something that they could pretty easily play off of as like, hey, we were just trying to protect these children. They don't know how to control their powers. So if it was something where Professor X was going through and actively suppressing that could
It'd
be
make a lot of sense. Yeah. No, there's so many reasons why it makes sense, right? Like, for instance, if there was like, you know, let's say there was a different stronghold of a character that was kind of protecting their image, and then post blip, that character had disappeared, and then as a result, there had to be other things that came into play. I mean, there's so many ways that they could enrich the re-involvement of the X-Men, you know, like, and make it so that at one point they were there. But I'm also totally open to the idea of a multiversal class, you know? There's such a bad villain amongst us in
they've also been setting up
wait, hold on. What's the guy's name? Yeah, the Incursion, right?
Yeah.
Like, but what's the name of the guy? Loki. Oh my god, I know his name. Kang. I would love Kang to have some way of a multiversal like destruction to where there's one universe where all converging life is teaming up together to live, and then that becomes the singular universe, because it would clean up them overusing the multiverse. And it could easily explain why the X-Men are there. I mean,
that's what happens in, as far as the comics, that's what happens in Secret Wars.
Yeah. And Secret Wars is coming to Disney Plus, so we'll see if that plays with the mutant stuff at all. Anyway, guys, I think we're dragging on a little bit.
Well, so I do want to question you as a casual watcher, as not a super nerd or anything. What would you feel the least strange about if you went to go see an X-Men movie or whatever, and they gave an explanation? What would feel the most natural to you?
Well, I think she liked that Wanda kind of explanation.
And I also think like anything with like mass, like magic kind of like fucking with people's minds, especially since we just saw Doctor Strange
with Spider-Man,
yeah, like that was Spider-Man.
And it's like, was that like the active like showing of us to prepare us for that idea?
Yeah, I think that they could really do something with that right now, and the audience like definitely buy it, and
that would further prove the Incursion, right? Because using magic like that causes universal upsets. Maybe that was another thing that kind of fucked with the multiverse, created the TVA, whatever it may be. Because as things are right now, there's a lot of plot points that don't actually line up, and there's things that are kind of messy. Yeah. And I'm hoping that something will come together. And Kevin Feige has hinted that you know, the conclusion coming soon, like the things coming with Black Panther and everything, will help converge things a little bit better with the 30th film in the MCU. But we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, guys, we've talked so much about Marvel stuff. In the comments, let us know about your predictions and also who you want to see play certain characters. I'm a big fan of Giancarlo Esposito playing Magneto. There's obviously the rumors that Taron Egerton will play Wolverine. He's really down with Daniel Radcliffe. He hopes it's that. But anyway, guys, as long as it's a good performer, we'll be happy. So let us know down in the comments what you think. And be sure to like and subscribe, baby, for more of that Marvel rambling. Let's do it.